Lena Monroe heard the sickening snap of her heel just as she stepped off the curb in front of the Four Seasons ballroom, and then she was falling. She gasped, arms flailing, but before she could hit the concrete, a warm, solid arm caught her. "Careful," came a deep, calm voice beside her. "You all right?" Lena blinked, her long lashes brushing her cheeks as she looked up. The man holding her was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her rent. His jaw was sharp, his eyes a piercing gray blue, and his hand remained steady at her waist. My heel," she muttered, glancing down at the broken shoe still half dangling from her foot. He crouched down without hesitation, plucked the heel from beneath her, and stood up again. "Yeah, that's done for." She gave a breathy laugh, brushing hair from her face. "Guess I made an entrance, or an exit," he said, offering his arm. "Come on, let me walk you inside before you twist your ankle next." Lena hesitated. "I don't even know your name." "Vaughn Fletcher," he said, steady and warm. "You, Lena Monroe." "Nice to catch you, Lena." He didn't wait for permission. Vaughn tucked her hand through his arm and started toward the hotel doors like he did this sort of thing all the time. And maybe he did. He looked like someone who didn't just walk into rooms, he owned them. Inside, the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and crystal glasses. Waiters in white jackets floated by with champagne flutes. Lena felt her posture stiffen as the scent of designer perfume and money hit her. She wasn't supposed to be here. "I'm just picking up a catering check," she said quickly, trying to retrieve her hand from his arm. "I don't belong at this thing." Vaughn stopped, turning to face her. "You work for Marble and Bloom, right?" Her eyes widened. "How did you?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded invoice. "I own the event. This is for you." Lena blinked. "You're the client, guilty. You're Vaughn Fletcher, as in Fletcher Enterprises, still guilty." Her fingers tightened around the check. She'd seen his name all over the order forms, but she'd assumed it was just some faceless CEO. Not this man standing in front of her, looking at her like she was the only one in the room. She felt awkward in her knee-length black dress, now lopsided thanks to one missing heel. Her cheeks flushed. "Okay, well, thanks for catching me and for the check. I should go." "Where's your ride?" "I took the train." Vaughn raised an eyebrow. "In those shoes?" "Well, one of them used to be in better shape." "You're not taking the train home like that," he said, already pulling out his phone. "I'll have my car take you." "I don't need, I insist." A sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb just minutes later. A driver opened the door and Vaughn helped her in with a hand at her back. "I can't believe this," she muttered, sliding into the leather seat. "Believe it." "And I'll call your catering manager tomorrow. Your work tonight was flawless." Lena blinked. "You noticed?" "I notice a lot of things." The door closed and the car pulled off, leaving Vaughn on the curb. Lena sat back, her heart pounding, the broken heel still in her hand. She didn't know it yet, but the billionaire who caught her would be the man who changed everything. The next morning, Lena arrived at the catering office to find her boss, Carla, standing by her desk with a look on her face like she'd just won the lottery. "You met Vaughn Fletcher last night?" she asked, wide-eyed. Lena nodded slowly. I fell into him. He requested you personally for his next event, said he wants you to oversee it." "What?" Lena's voice cracked. "I don't even." "I'm not management." "You are now," Carla said, slapping a folder into her hands. "He's throwing a private dinner party in 2 weeks, and he wants you to meet him today to go over everything." Lena opened the folder. On top was a gold-embossed invite with the words Fletcher Estate printed across the top. Her stomach flipped. Vaughn's home wasn't a house. It was a mansion. No, a palace, white stone, glass walls, fountains in the driveway. She stood there on the front steps, suddenly self-conscious in her off-the-rack blazer. The door opened before she could knock. "You made it," Vaughn said, standing there in a navy sweater and jeans that somehow made him look even more unfairly attractive. "I hope I'm not underdressed." "You're not." He stepped aside. "Come on in, Lena." Inside, the place was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the Pacific, a grand piano, art she didn't dare price. "Would you like coffee?" he asked, already walking toward the kitchen. "Sure." She followed him, still trying to process how she'd ended up here. He handed her a mug and leaned against the counter. "I looked into your work. You're good, really good." Thanks, she said, wrapping her hands around the mug. I've been doing this a long time. But you don't love it. She looked up sharply. How would you know that? Because you looked uncomfortable last night, like you wanted to disappear. Lena hesitated. I'm used to being behind the scenes. But you shouldn't be. Their eyes met, and something crackled in the air between them. Over the next 2 weeks, Lena found herself pulled deeper into Vaughn's world. She met at his penthouse for planning meetings. He took her to tastings at Michelin-starred restaurants, letting her try rare wines and exotic dishes. He listened when she spoke. Really listened, and he made her laugh. God, he made her laugh. One night, after a long planning session at his place, he handed her a box. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a pair of black heels, simple, elegant, and she checked the label designer. I can't accept these. You can. You broke your last pair helping make my event perfect. Consider it repayment. She looked up at him. His gaze was steady. Thank you, she said softly. You're welcome. They stood there, just looking at each other. And for a moment, Lena thought he might kiss her, but he didn't, not yet. The night of the dinner party arrived. Lena wore the heels he gave her and a deep blue gown her friend had loaned her. When she stepped into the ballroom, Vaughn's eyes found hers instantly. You look. He breathed out. Perfect, she smiled. Thanks to you, he offered his arm, and this time she took it without hesitation. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were already falling. The air outside Vaughn's estate was laced with salt from the Pacific, but Lena barely noticed the view as she stepped out onto the private terrace. The soft hum of conversation floated from the glowing interior, but out here, it was quiet. She needed a breath, a moment away from the polished guests and glittering silverware. She gripped the edge of the railing, her fingers cool against the marble, her thoughts tangled. Vaughn had introduced her to every guest with a confidence that felt too natural. This is Lena Monroe, he'd said again and again, as though her name carried weight. As though she belonged in a room filled with tech moguls and hedge fund titans. The door behind her opened and his voice followed. You disappeared. I needed air, she said without turning. Vaughn stepped beside her, silent for a moment. The ocean stretched into darkness beyond the cliffs. You handled tonight flawlessly? I'm used to managing chaos. This was practically calm, she replied, then glanced at him. Though I could have done without someone asking if I was your date, he looked at her, unreadable. What did you say? I told them I'm the event coordinator. That's one way to put it. She turned fully now, brows lifting. What other way is there? You've been more than that, Lena exhaled slowly. Vaughn, I don't know what you're trying to do. I'm not trying, he said. I'm just telling the truth. She stepped back, needing space. You barely know me. I know you're sharp. You don't let people talk over you. You have opinions you don't water down to make them easier to hear. You don't flinch under pressure. And when you're uncomfortable, you don't pretend not to be. You stand your ground. She stared at him, lips parted, her heart thudding a little too hard. You've been paying attention. I always do. Silence stretched between them again until a waiter appeared with a tray. Mr. Fletcher, the investor from Singapore, is asking for you. Vaughn's jaw tightened slightly. Tell him I'll be right there. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Lena turned back to the ocean. You should go. I don't want to. She shook her head. This is your world. Go be in it. He didn't argue, but his voice was quiet when he finally said, You're wrong if you think I want to be around them more than you. After he left, she stayed on the terrace long enough for the breeze to cool her skin and her thoughts to settle. Then she slipped back inside, ducked into the service hallway, and made her way toward the kitchen. The staff was winding down, and she moved through them with purpose, ready to wrap up the night. She found a quiet spot near the back exit and pulled out her phone to check the time. Midnight. The event had gone off without a hitch, and her team had already packed up. Her rideshare had just pulled up at the gate when Vaughn appeared again. I was about to call for my driver, he said. Why didn't you wait? I didn't want to bother you. You're not a bother. I'm not your responsibility either. He stepped closer, hands in his pockets. You're not, but I was hoping you'd stay a little longer. She tilted her head. Why? Because every time you leave, something about the room feels wrong. Lena laughed under her breath. Do you always talk like that? No, he said, Only around you, the car behind her honked gently. She looked at the vehicle, then back at Vaughn. I have work in the morning, she said. Come to dinner tomorrow. Is that a request or a command? It's a hope, she hesitated. I don't date clients. I'm not your client anymore. The event's over. I'm still recovering from tonight. Then let me handle dinner. No pressure, just food, conversation. No guest lists, she studied him. Fine, one dinner. He opened the car door for her. I'll send the details. As the car pulled away, Lena glanced back once. Vaughn stood in the driveway, hands still in his pockets, watching her go not like a man waiting, but like a man deciding. The next evening, she stood in front of a set of tall glass doors, wondering if she was out of her mind. The address Vaughn sent belonged to a restaurant she'd only ever seen in magazines. No signage, no menu posted, just a valet stand, a red carpet, and a host who greeted her by name. This way, Miss Monroe. He led her through a private entrance, down a narrow hall, and into a candlelit room with a single table. Vaughn was already seated, a pair of crystal glasses before him. You made it, he said, standing as she entered. I almost didn't, she replied, settling across from him. Why? Because I'm not used to being in places like this. Then that's my mistake. I should have brought the food to you. She raised an eyebrow. You'd have brought a Michelin chef to my apartment? Absolutely. The waiter arrived and poured a deep red wine. Vaughn didn't look at the list. He already knew what he wanted. As they ate, their conversation wandered books, childhood memories, the weird jobs she'd taken in college. He listened without interrupting, asked questions without prying. She caught herself laughing more than once, the kind that surprised her, but when the plates were cleared, Vaughn leaned forward, expression shifting. I wasn't honest the other night, he said. Lena tensed. About what? He paused. Why I asked for you after the first event, she didn't speak. I could say it was your attention to detail, your professionalism, but that's not the truth. I asked for you because I couldn't stop thinking about you, her breath caught. I didn't plan for this, he continued, but I don't want to pretend anymore. Lena sat back, stunned silent. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just needed you to know. She looked at him, really looked. The billionaire who moved through boardrooms like a storm, sitting across from her, waiting not with arrogance but with vulnerability. I don't know what you think this is, she said carefully, but I'm not someone you can add to your list of acquisitions. I don't want to own you, Lena. I want to know you. She reached for her wine, needing a distraction. This is a lot. It is. But I don't run from complicated. His gaze held hers. Then don't run from me. She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. And when the check came, though she hadn't seen a menu and no prices were printed, Vaughn simply nodded, and the waiter disappeared. Outside, his driver waited beside the car. He opened the door for her again. As she slid inside, she glanced at him. Next time, she said, you're coming to my place and I'm ordering pizza, he smiled. Then I'll bring the wine. The car pulled away and Lena pressed her fingers to her lips, not because she was smiling, but because her heart was doing something dangerous. It was starting to open. The knock at Lena's apartment door came just as she was brushing flour from her hands. She opened it to find Vaughn standing there, a bottle of wine in one hand and a brown paper bag in the other. You cooked? She asked, arching a brow. I ordered, he said. But I brought dessert. She stepped aside, letting him in. You're early, you said 7. It's 7. It's 6:52. I'm nothing if not enthusiastic. She watched him take in the space, modest, clean, with warm lighting and a small table set for two. Her kitchen was still mid-chaos, half-sliced vegetables and a pan of sauce on the stove. I thought you'd bring a bodyguard or two, she said. I thought you'd have a roommate hiding in the closet. He set the wine on the counter. Looks like we both get to be surprised, she laughed, then turned back to stir the sauce. Her shoulders were more relaxed than she expected. Maybe it was the way he fit into her space without rearranging it. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't comment on the size of her fridge or the creak in the floorboards. I got the wine based on the label, he said, holding it up. There's a wolf on it. I figured that had to mean something. She glanced at the bottle. It's French. Then it probably means this will ruin your budget. I think that ship sailed the minute you stepped into my kitchen. He leaned against the counter, watching her with a faint grin. You didn't mention you could cook. You didn't ask. I'm asking now. She handed him a spoon. Taste, he did, and his eyebrows lifted slightly. You're dangerous, I know. They ate at her tiny table, knees bumping under the surface, the city humming outside the windows. No white tablecloths, no waiters, no sweeping views of the ocean, just her, him, and the smell of garlic and fresh basil. Did you always want to cook? He asked, setting down his fork. No, she said, pouring the wine. I learned because I couldn't afford takeout, then I started to like it. It's the only part of the day I get to control, Vaughn nodded. I get that, she tilted her head. What about you? Did you always want to run a company that controls half of downtown? I didn't want to run anything, he said. I wanted to build things. But then my father died and the board handed me a kingdom I didn't ask for, her expression softened. I didn't know. I don't talk about it. Why not? Because if I talk about it, I have to admit I didn't stop to grieve. I just started running. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she reached across the table and touched his hand. You don't have to earn your breath, Vaughn. You're allowed to stand still. His jaw tightened just slightly, but he didn't pull away. You make it sound easy. I didn't say it was. I just think you've been holding your breath a long time. The silence between them deepened, not empty but full of something neither of them wanted to break. After dinner, she cleared the plates while he opened the dessert box. Mini tarts, powdered sugar dusting the tops. He handed her one like it was an offering. I should warn you, he said, I don't usually do this. Eat sugar, eat dessert with someone who makes me forget I'm supposed to be in control. She took a bite. Lucky for you, I'm not interested in control. I'm interested in honesty. He watched her, his gaze steady. Then here's some honesty. I don't know what this is between us, but I haven't felt it before, and I don't want it to stop. She set the tart down, suddenly unsure where the ground was. You live in a world I don't understand, she said quietly, and I don't know what happens when someone like me steps into it for real. Then let me show you. I don't need a lifestyle. I need something real. Then let me show you that too. His hand brushed her cheek, tentative, like he was waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. When he kissed her, it wasn't a question. It was a realization, warm, certain, and slow. Her fingers curled into his shirt, anchoring herself as the world narrowed to the space between them. When they parted, their foreheads touched. This is going to be complicated, she whispered. Good, he murmured. I'm sick of simple. They stayed like that, neither speaking, the city lights casting long shadows through the window. The next morning, Lena stood by her window with coffee in hand, watching Vaughn's car disappear down the street. He'd stayed for breakfast, made her laugh before he left. Promised to call before she even had to ask. 20 minutes later, her phone rang. Carla's voice came sharp and fast. You need to get down here. Why? What happened? There's a problem. One of the venues we're contracted with just pulled out of the March wedding. We're scrambling. I need your brain and your contacts. Now. Lena was already reaching for her bag. By the time she arrived at the catering office, the place was buzzing. Carla handed her a clipboard and a list of vendors. I know this is short notice, she said, but if anyone can fix it, it's you. Lena scanned the names, then paused. One of the alternate venues was a Fletcher property. A resort hotel Vaughn's company had acquired last year. Carla caught her hesitation. You know someone there? I might, Lena said carefully. She stepped outside, pulled out her phone, and dialed. Vaughn answered on the second ring. Didn't expect to hear from you this soon, he said. Everything okay? I need a favor. Name it. She hesitated, then said, Do you still own the Orchid Bay property? Yes, I need it for a wedding in 4 weeks. There was a pause. Done. Just like that. You needed it. That's enough. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. He already knew. That night, Lena sat on her fire escape with a glass of wine, staring at the skyline. The lines between their worlds were blurring faster than she'd expected, and she wasn't sure if that meant she was rising or about to fall. But either way, Vaughn was already waiting at the bottom. The elevator doors opened silently to the top floor of a downtown skyscraper wrapped in glass and morning haze. Lena stepped out, heart steady despite the height. She'd been summoned to Fletcher Enterprises for a final walk-through regarding the Orchid Bay wedding. Or so the assistant had said. But when she was led into Vaughn's private office, It was empty save for a single envelope on his desk with her name written in clean, angular letters. She picked it up, hesitating for the briefest moment before opening it. It wasn't a letter, it was a boarding pass, private jet, destination, Florence, Italy, departure tonight. She turned just as Vaughn entered, jacket off, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked like he'd walked out of a magazine and directly into her quiet spiral. "Before you say anything," he said, "hear me out." She held up the pass. "This is your idea of a final planning meeting. I need 72 hours, just you and me. You can't be serious." "I've never been more." "There's a villa outside Florence. I used to go there when I needed to think. I haven't been back in 4 years. And now I want to go with you." Lena crossed her arms. "You don't think flying me to Italy is a little excessive? I think we have stopped being ordinary the night you fell into my arms. I've tried to play it safe, I've tried to stay measured, but I'm done pretending I don't want more." She looked at the pass again, then at the man who had slowly, unexpectedly unraveled her defenses. "I have work. I cleared your schedule with Carla. She owes me a favor. You talked to my boss before talking to me. I talked to your boss because I was terrified you'd say no. I needed to make sure I had every excuse removed, so the only thing left was your answer." Lena stared at him, stunned, irritated, and undeniably moved. "Do I at least get to bring my own toothbrush? I had one packed for you." "But if you insist, I'll make room." That night, the jet soared over the Atlantic, and Lena sat wrapped in a blanket beside the window, watching stars blink over clouds. Vaughn was across from her, legs crossed, reading a book in Italian. He glanced up. "You're quiet." "I'm trying to process the fact that I'm on a plane to Italy with a man I met because I broke a shoe." He set the book down. "Do you regret it?" "Not yet." "Good. Because I'd hate to think my most impulsive move ended in disaster." The villa was perched on a cliff above the Arno Valley, surrounded by olive trees and silence. The stone walls were warm from the sun, and the windows opened to terraced gardens. Everything smelled of lavender and citrus. Lena stood on the balcony, hair lifted by the breeze, as Vaughn poured 2 glasses of wine inside. "You used to come here often?" she asked when he joined her. "After my father died," he said. "This place was the only thing that didn't ask anything of me." She accepted the glass. "And now I want to share it." They didn't leave the estate for 2 days. They walked through the vineyards, cooked simple meals, and read in the sun. Vaughn showed her a dusty old piano in a back room and played a few clumsy notes before laughing and letting her take over. She surprised him with a soft jazz melody, her fingers light on the keys. "You've been holding out on me," he said. "I stopped playing in college. Too many bills, not enough time. You should start again." She looked at him. "You're starting to sound like someone who wants to rewrite my future." "I do." On the 3rd night, Lena woke from a light sleep and found Vaughn standing in the garden, barefoot, looking up at the stars. She pulled a throw around her shoulders and joined him. "You always this restless?" she asked. "Only when I'm about to do something terrifying." She stepped beside him, close enough to feel the heat of his skin. "What could possibly terrify you, losing you?" Her breath caught. "I've built empires," he said. "I've negotiated deals with men who would eat their own to win, but I've never asked for something I couldn't control. Until now," she swallowed. "Say it." "I love you." The words hung there, suspended in the quiet air between them. "I love you," he said again, softer now. "From the moment you looked at me like I wasn't untouchable, like I was just a man." Lena didn't speak right away. She looked up at the stars, then back at the only man who'd ever made her feel seen. "I'm scared too," she said. "But not of you." "Of losing myself?" "Then don't." He reached for her hand. "Be all of you. I'll meet you there." She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Then yes, to what? To everything." His mouth found hers with a certainty that made her knees soften. Not rushed, not urgent, just real. Like a promise. They flew back 2 days later, and the city felt different, less suffocating, more alive. At the Orchid Bay wedding, Lena moved through the venue with quiet command. Vaughn watched her from across the room, arms folded, pride written clearly across his face. Carla nudged her at one point. "You look different." "I feel different." Funny what love does to people. After the last champagne flute was cleared, Vaughn took her hand, led her outside, and helped her into the Bentley. She gave him a look. "What?" I was expecting another surprise. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small velvet box, and placed it in her palm. Her eyes widened as she opened it. Inside was a charm in the shape of a high-heel delicate, silver, with a tiny diamond at the center. "No grand proposal," she teased. "Not yet." He leaned in, his voice warm against her ear. "But I wanted you to remember how this all started, the moment you lost your balance, and I found mine." She stared at the charm, then at him. And in that moment, Lena knew without doubt this wasn't the end of something wild. It was the beginning of something true. The first time Lena saw the Fletcher Foundation gala in full swing, it was from the back of the ballroom, clipboard in hand, headset in place, and nerves buzzing down her spine. Now, months later, she was walking in on Vaughn's arm, not as an event coordinator, but as his partner invited, expected, and dressed in a sapphire gown that skimmed the floor like smoke. The moment they entered, conversations paused, eyes turned. Not because of the dress or even Vaughn's presence, but because of the way he looked at her like nothing else in the room mattered. "Are you ready for this?" he asked softly, adjusting the clasp of the diamond cuff she wore on her wrist. "I'm more worried about not tripping on this train," she replied under her breath. "You could fall flat on your face and they'd still be talking about how you owned the room." They didn't need a grand entrance, but the way they moved together made the room feel like it had adjusted just slightly to accommodate them. Near the stage, Vaughn paused. "There's someone I want you to meet." Lena followed his gaze to an older man with silver hair and a cane resting near his chair. His features were familiar, not in a personal way, but in the way business magazines often captured the faces of legacy. "Lena, this is Malcolm Grayson. He was my father's closest partner, and mine before I took the reins." Malcolm's eyes glinted with interest. "So this is the woman who's managed to do what board members, lawyers, and CEOs couldn't make Vaughn Fletcher human." Lena offered her hand. "I'm not sure I'd take all that credit." "You should," Malcolm said, shaking it firmly. "He used to close off entire floors of this hotel to avoid conversation. Now he's throwing open doors." Vaughn chuckled under his breath. "All right, Malcolm. Let's not make this a roast." But Lena could see the affection in his eyes. When they moved on, Vaughn leaned closer. "He's the reason I didn't walk away from the company after my father died. Told me grief wasn't weakness, it was proof I still cared. I like him. He likes you, which is rarer." Later in the evening, as Vaughn took the stage to deliver his speech, Lena watched from a small table near the front. The lights cast him in soft gold, and the room fell silent as he spoke, not rehearsed, but real. He spoke about rebuilding, about legacy, about how the foundation wasn't just about money, but about honoring the past by shaping the future. Then his voice softened. "And none of this," he said, "would matter if I hadn't learned that building a future means letting someone in. Really in. Not just into your life, but into your fears, your hopes, your quiet moments, and your chaos. I learned that from someone who walked into my world and didn't flinch. Just stood there and asked for honesty." The audience turned toward Lena, but she kept her gaze fixed on Vaughn. "I owe who I am now to her," he finished, "and I think my father would have been proud of that." The applause was thunderous, but Vaughn didn't look at the crowd, he looked at her. When the gala ended and the final guests filtered out, Vaughn found her standing by the fountain just outside the ballroom, the night quiet around them. "Why do I feel like you just proposed to me in front of 600 people?" she asked. "Because I did," he said. "Just in my way." She turned to face him, the wind tugging gently at the ends of her hair. "Do you want to do it in mine?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "You mean like this?" Her breath caught as he flipped it open to reveal a ring unlike anything she'd ever seen, simple, elegant, and utterly her. "I was going to wait," Vaughn said, "until we were somewhere private. But then I realized I don't want to wait for anything with you." She stared at him, heart thudding. "You're serious?" "I want to build a life with you, not a fantasy, not a headline, a real life. With groceries, bad TV, burnt toast, and mornings where neither of us wants to get out of bed." I want all of it if it's with you. She didn't hesitate. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and she threw her arms around him, burying her face in the crook of his neck as the world tilted and righted itself all at once. They didn't need fireworks. The stars were already burning above them. 6 months later, Lena stood barefoot in the kitchen of their shared home, a sleek, sunlit penthouse with plants she kept alive and art she'd picked out herself. Vaughn was at the stove, trying and failing to flip an omelet without breaking it. You could have just ordered breakfast, she said, sipping her coffee. I'm practicing, for our anniversary. That's in 11 months, I like to be prepared. She walked up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You know, she said, I used to think people like you weren't real. Rich, charming, and devastatingly handsome. No, capable of change, he turned, catching her around the waist. I changed because you showed me something worth changing for. They kissed, slow and easy, the kind of kiss that didn't rush, didn't demand, just existed like breath. Later, as they curled up on the couch, Lena rested her head on his chest and traced circles over the fabric of his shirt. You still scared? He asked. Not anymore. Good, because I'm not letting go. You better not, she said, eyes closing, and he didn't. They stayed wrapped in each other, surrounded by the quiet things love leaves behind trust, warmth, laughter soft at the edges, not perfect, not polished. Just theirs, forever,